Hello and welcome along this afternoon. We're a smidge late, but we're here nonetheless. Our guest this afternoon is Annah Stretton. She really doesn't need an introduction. She's a super successful CEO and entrepreneur and philanthropist. She runs the Stretton Group. She's been and she's had a number of awards through the years, and I'm delighted to say she's got a bit of advice for us now. She's with us now. Hello to you, Annah. Thanks for joining us.
Rachel. Apologies for the late arrival. That's just my inability to operate simple things.
That's okay. That's okay. We're all improving our digital capability. I think that's perhaps the upside of COVID-19. I think, Annah. I wanted to ask you just first of all, really, what are you doing as, I guess, a human at the moment? You know, business aside, how are you coping with the lockdown, and how have you approached it?
Oh man, we've never been busier. We had a reach out just before lockdown, a charity that I was connected with, and they asked me whether I could make some fabric masks for them. They were working with vulnerable older people, and they were looking for 6,000 of them. So they presented the pattern to me, and I said to them, look, I believe I can actually do this a little better. I don't know that the pattern is such a great fit. And so we're in the business of fabric mask making. I think we're up to about 15,000. I feel like I'm back at the start of my business. Wow, I'm packing, I'm doing everything. And we've been classed as an essential business. And we've been able to work with so many different charitable organisations that actually haven't been able to access the mask. And so while we know that they're not surgical, they're certainly great for anxiety, hand-to-mouth transmission. If you do get sick, they'll stop droplets moving out and about into the environment. And they'll also stop landfill because they're 100% cotton and they're not the paper. So, man, are we busy, really busy.
Wow, that's quite incredible, actually. In terms of your business then, how has your mindset, I guess, morphed and changed from, day one, day two, we're going into lockdown through to now? That must have been quite a journey for, I guess, an entrepreneurial mind.
Well, I guess I was pretty philosophical around it. I mean, when it started to happen, I thought about the 10 retail stores that I had. I was also really aware of the journey that China had taken. We have been working out of China for 10 years, and we're very close to a lot of the factories that we work with there. And so we kind of knew the timeframes that attached to the closures that we were about to face. So I knew that I was really unlikely to get retail up and going within the next 3 months at least. So whilst we're looking at a month, I was optimistic that we would be out within a month for some of the organisation, but certainly didn't believe that retail or the cafe that we operate would be out. So I guess once it happened, it's like anything. You just reframe and start to move forward and do what you can. And it was the email that came in, read the masks. And I thought, well, okay, we're in the business of mask making, and what does that look and feel like? So that's been massive. But yeah, for me in fashion, it's a really tough business anyway. I mean, we were transacting globally, we were competing globally, whether we liked it or not, and it's just been harder and harder to make money out of fashion. So certainly I didn't have big, massive cash reserves at the bank that I could sort of look at and go, well, look, I'm all good, I'll sit this out. So there was a whole lot of decisions that had to be made around infrastructure and people as well.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of those decisions around infrastructure and people, and I guess initially in the survival mode. So what does your mind do when you're in this space and you're like, right, no revenue coming in, there's leases, there's suppliers, there's a bunch of people here, crucially there's staff. What was the mental process, that you went through and probably still going through now to deal with some of these issues?
Well, I think the first thing was the people. I had to work out what that looked like, and they were obviously and naturally anxious as to what that would all look like for them. And so there was a process I had to work through there. I guess I'm lucky through the work that I do in the prisons. I'm very used to working with government. Corrections, MSD, police. So I had a lot of, there was people that I had in, I guess, different senior roles that I was able to activate conversations with. And I also became someone that was a little obsessed around watching news bulletins and making sure that I really had good knowledge around what was happening, because everybody kind of had a version of what was happening and what it was going to look like. So for me, the first thing was, wow, is this really happening? And then when I sort of got my head around the fact that it was, I guess the first thing I did was think about the people. I obviously applied for the subsidy really, really quickly. I mean, we had 2 goes at the subsidy because we were obviously over the threshold. So I initially looked to, who I would apply for. And there was only a few that I initially wasn't able to. And then I got to play catch up, which was awesome. And then I sent an email out to the landlords of the 10 stores that I worked with. And I just said, this is the reality for me. We're at the pointy end of this. If we have no income, and that's like nothing, I won't be able to pay you. So therefore I'd be looking for a 3-month rent holiday. So that was the email that I sent to them to start that conversation. I also sent the same email to the utilities, anything that was kind of a monthly payment. EFTPOS New Zealand was another one. But I certainly wasn't asking, I guess, but then I wasn't dictatorial either. It was just, this is what's happened. We're all sharing in this, and this is, I guess, the expectation that I have from you.
I'm just going to close the window because how's this for live podcasting? Someone's turned a lawnmower on outside. Crikey, Dick. Okay. What you have described is this really logical, calm, sort of measured approach, and I guess that comes from being as experienced as you are, and in the nicest possible way, as long in the tooth as you are in this industry and at the coalface of business. But you must have seen as well. There's a lot of fear and a lot of panic out there about this unprecedented situation. What's your advice to people to dealing with those feelings of anxiety and fear right now? How do you get into that logical mindset that you had?
Well, I guess working in the prisons again, fear is manufactured. So from the point of view of, I guess there's fear around the virus itself. And from that point of view, it is about just best hygiene practice, the physical distancing that we need to be doing, staying in the bubble, taking all the precautions and being incredibly sensible around that. So that's the first thing. And I had to bring a team back to work. So I had to make that I had to make sure that was a very real thing for us around the hygiene, the physical distancing, making sure that team was comfortable to work in that space. So I guess I've never really been fearful of anything. It's more about finding some courage to move forward and work within this new framework. And I totally believe that we'll be entering a new normal now. Nothing is going to be the same as it was before. So I don't believe we're suddenly going to turn the switch on after a month, 2 months, 3 months, and we'll be back to normal. It'll be a very, very different normal for us all. And certainly I see that in China. And some of the things that are happening there. So, I don't fear, and I certainly didn't panic, and I certainly didn't think, oh my God, how am I going to do this? How am I going to, pay for all this? Because that's essentially what we're looking at, a whole lot of costs when you've got a company like myself. Yeah, I guess the good thing is that we had the winter collection on the water, and it was here. But that was a good thing when when the virus broke out in China, because that became a problem for us initially, in that if we didn't have our collection out, we wouldn't be able to, to work through the winter season. But now that winter season is just sitting in our warehouse, so it can't go anywhere and it can't be sold. So it's just a whole lot of cost. But you can only do what you can do. And I guess it's about putting people first. It's about taking a really practical approach to some of those costs that sit there. And it's about making sure that you communicate really well with those people that are in this with you, I guess. And in a lot of cases, my biggest costs are my people and the property, so the landlords, the rentals.
That was one of the areas I was going to talk to you about in terms of communication, and we'll get to landlords in a minute. But, the people, he tangata, what approach have you taken to communicating, particularly across your stores and your suppliers, and how frequently are you communicating with the people who have been working for you and your suppliers as well? What's your messaging been like?
Well, with the girls that work on the retail team all the time. So every day I email with them, and we've activated within the Facebook and the digital framework. So every day they're on doing, not trying to sell people things, but just trying to sort of send quirky and different messaging. So we get snapshots of their lives. Some of them are doing some crazy things. Every so often I issue them a dare to do something that's quite extreme, where I've seen a really cool post and see if anyone's up for replicating it, or within the framework of what we should be doing, of course. I mean, I'm not getting them to mountain bike miles away in the bush somewhere, but we're communicating every day, which is great. And and it's not just about saying, well, we've shut the retail stores down. It's about saying, how do we remain relevant, and how do we stay in front of our customer? How do we connect our customer? And there's been some awesome things happen on a small VIP group that we set up in the Facebook space, not just because of COVID, that had been set up as well, but the customers are loving it. They're getting into their wardrobes and they're digging out their sort of the Instagram outfits, and they're popping them on, and there's just all sorts of stuff happening. I mean, I got into the garden and I frocked myself up the other day and put gumboots on, and sort of said, well, this is the only time I can get dressed up, with the fascinator on. And so we're always having a lot of fun with that. But I'm really conscious of just not selling to people as we would normally. I'm engaging with people and just making people feel good about who we are, the brand, and the girls that are at the forefront of our stores. And many of those women have been with us for up to 10 years, which is often unheard of in retail. So their connection is way deeper than mine with those customers. So that's why it's important we're all engaging.
It is a really challenging pathway that brands walk, I think, at the moment, because how you act now as a brand, consumers have, I think, long memories, and those brands who had a bit of grit and a bit of compassion versus perhaps, the opportunistic hard sell, I think that will stand them in good stead post COVID-19.
Yeah, I think the key to it is to go in for the right reasons. I guess, the mask making has turned into this phenomenal thing, and I'm looking at how I now turn that into a business, because there's obviously a real opportunity there. And speaking to my China colleagues last week, it is a non-negotiable for them when they go out, they must wear a mask. That's part of, the new way forward for them. And while they were, prolific mask wearers anyway, there's certainly, that's been activated to a much higher level. So I'm sort of looking at what the opportunity is in that space now. But at the moment, it's much more of a charitable effort, where everybody is sort of being mobilised to meet a need, where there are people that are essentially feel that they're very frontline, whether it be the city mission, whether it be the midwives, whether it be people delivering meals on wheels, and they want to reduce anxiety and want masks. So that's
it's really interesting. You touched on the fact that what is the new normal, and we don't quite know what that looks like. But I know in New Zealand we've historically been, we raise an eyebrow when we see someone walking along wearing a mask. Do you think in future, it might be becoming more modern, or more common rather, to wear a mask, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. It makes a lot of sense. There's nothing. I do a lot of flying, and a lot of flying to Wellington, to Christchurch, and there's nothing that I guess rankles me more than sitting in those tiny planes that fly out of Hamilton, and someone's got the flu beside you or across the aisle, and they're sneezing and their droplets are going everywhere, and you're thinking, wow, I'm going to walk off this plane with the flu. It's the last thing that I actually needed, and there's just no etiquette around that. So I think one of the nice things is that's never going to happen again, and we're never going to allow that to happen again. So there's some really nice modifications to our behaviours, which there's lots of good things that have come out of this. The way that we've slowed down, the way that we are behaving differently around health and illness, which is just the social niceties of when we're out in a group. But I do. I think all of the fashion designers will get into the masks. There'll be the Karen Walker mask, and there'll be the Trelise Cooper mask, and probably be a little more expensive than our one is at the moment. But it will be. I think it will be part of who we are, and importantly so. I don't know if we'll ever be able to get rid of COVID in totality.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, but I think what the message that I get from you for SMEs is innovation. Like as much as the challenge has landed on your plate, I guess you've looked for the opportunity within that. And sure, that's in a charity sense at the moment, but you're looking at behavioural change in people, and perhaps we will be wearing masks. Is that what you think all small, medium-sized businesses should be doing in New Zealand, looking for the innovation in this situation we're in now?
all do that all the time. You know, we should always be focusing on what those points of differences are that set us apart and what is a very crowded market. And I guess one of the nice stories is we had a nurse that sent us this very cool picture of a headband, because they are very, you know, the ears are getting sore with all the mask wearing. And so this headband had, you know, a particular design, which we then went and developed that design, and we've just been inundated. I mean, so then we put that design to market. So I guess the fact that we had the infrastructure still here in New Zealand, I still had all of my big industrial machines. We still had a huge cutting area. We had all the cutting machines. So we were able to get going very, very quickly. So at the moment, you know, we've now got a child's mask, an adult's mask, and the headband in the market, and looking at some other sort of simple ideas that will actually meet a need in this time, where people are saying, you know, these are the things that we need to buy, we want to buy, and we need to buy them now.
And we always think of things like gloves to keep our hands warm, but actually in summer we might want the thinner styled, longer, longer gloves.
Well, they're not so easy to make. I mean, that's probably more a product in China. And I've already activated China now to make the masks, because, you know, initially it was, okay, 30 years of being in business, I've got a hell of a lot of fabric, embarrassingly so, way too much fabric. So we were able to activate so much, you know, so many masks through the fabric that I had. And also the elastics that I'd had from years and years of cutting locally. So all of that was donated to the mask project. But as some people suggest, the masks are getting a little boring at the moment. But I kind of figured, boring or not, they do the job. But we've now activated China to get involved, and the masks are much prettier. They're spotty, and they're, you know, there's flowers, there's all sorts of different things on them. Yeah.
What about some of the, you know, the practical things? You mentioned it earlier about the conversations you needed to have, those tricky conversations. The innovation is amazing, but nonetheless, you still had to probably look at, I'm assuming, cash flow modelling and have conversations with landlords about your situation. How did you approach those conversations and sort of the nuts and bolts of Stretton Group?
Well, you know, I'm a very black and white person, and I guess that works for me and against me in a lot of ways, especially with the work that we do in the prisons. The girls find me a little difficult because I'm just so black and white, where my sister's very opposite. You know, she's very fluffy and grey, and we work together in that space. But when you're working in the commercial sense, and you're working in, you know, I guess within an environment that COVID throws up at us, it's not really a negotiable space for me. So I guess what it was about communicating well, communicating in a very clear way, and setting the expectation around what it was I needed. So I wasn't really negotiating. I was saying, hey, this is what I need. And I guess there was a real diversity of reply. Some landlords chose not to reply. Others came back and said, yeah, sure, well, you know, we can do that. Others came and said, look, send me your sales forecast, which I just laughed out loud, because I said, what do you not understand about no sales period? You know, we're closed, the fashion is not essential. So, and others came back and said, you know, like, we'd be prepared to look at 50%, or, you know, could you do that? So it was really mixed around what we sort of entered into from the point of having that conversation, but also the reactions. But I guess I wasn't really, and I don't say this in a belligerent, arrogant way, but I wasn't really negotiating. I was saying, this is where it's at, and this is what I will be able to do. So yeah, and it was, yeah. And then when there was a couple that kind of got into the what I would call that very grisly sort of mode around, and I just ignored them, because I figured that if I didn't keep pouring petrol on their grizzles, they wouldn't ignite anymore. So
yeah, okay. What are the learnings, do you think, for us in this space? I mean, you know, how we were operating 2 weeks ago versus where we're at now. What do you think we can learn from it, I guess, as from a small business perspective, from an economy, from a country?
Oh, there's hundreds, you know, and I've been doing a lot of writing around this and loading it to Facebook. But, you know, the reconnection and the importance that have been placed on people, and we've forgotten that, you know, within a business world, we've become very narcissistic, very money-driven, very much about self. And what I love about the way that we're being led by Jacinda is that it is people first. It's people first, and she's placed the people before the economy. And I guess that gives me a really nice starting space when I'm looking to negotiate around costs as well, because it is about people, and any money that I do get, it's about making sure that my people are actually looked after. So that's my focus. But I love, the reconnection with the way that we should be living. People are, we can't get flour because people are baking. There's so much more time being spent, with each other, with family. I love the fact that, even though I have become manically busy, if the mask hadn't come into play, I wouldn't have been. It would have been a very different platform for me, and I would have been doing a lot more of that stuff that has, yes, we believe it's lost its importance, but it hasn't. We've all slowed down. I love that. We need to slow down. I guess what happens when we come out around some of the challenges around some of the mental health challenges that will happen from the point of view of, where business hasn't weathered the storm so well. But I guess if you can have those conversations up front and you are philosophical about them, you can minimize some of that, because it really is just in here. Some of the stuff that you're battling with. So it's how you bring a perspective to it. But I love, a lot of the aspects of what's happened here, the way it has slowed us down, it's connected us, it's refocused what is important to us. We're cooking, we all have to cook. We all have to get out into our gardens and look at the weather. Hasn't the weather played ball? I know it's been difficult weather for a lot of people that rely on it for livelihood, but for people that are at home, our road is just full of people walking and connecting and just being together and enjoying each other.
I think the takeaway for our platform for Manaaki, Anna, is communicate and people first. Yeah, great.
Trust yourself to be able to do that. Trust who you are, believe in yourself, and I think to just lead well. With a really clear black and white sort of very definitive stance that has just a massive dollop of kindness across that, and the way that you do it, but really trust who you are. And, I guess I just stood up tall and I said, this is who we are and this is what I'm going to do.
Great. Now, if people want to connect with you, you're one of the advisors on the Manaaki platform, which is great. Our website is manaaki.io. If people want to come through and ask some questions, you will be on there. There's about 120 advisors on there at the moment across all areas, which is fantastic. Anna, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been amazing and so insightful. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I look forward to seeing more of those masks. I did have a quick look at the site. They look amazing. So great work, great innovation. Thanks so much.
Awesome to talk to you, and awesome to be part of this site and be able to sort of just, I have a very different perspective often than, in the advice that I give, but I guess it's just that common sense approach I like to apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you do. Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can go to our platform, manaaki.io, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll have more podcasts as well, I think starting around 10:30 tomorrow through the course of the day. Hook up with us on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well. And, of course, manaaki.io. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay safe. Stay home. Stay local.